Today we're going to be talking about Crimson Peak. Now this is a second take because the previous take, while it was an excellent take, I was going off on many different other tangents. I was talking about intermissions, I was talking about all this other stuff that I feel like doesn't need to be in this video. So I'm just going to roughly summarize the stuff that I'm not going to discuss that I discussed at length in the previous take. I talked about how this film feels like there was about an hour cut from the original edit. How they may have shot initially like maybe 3 hours of film, and they decided they were told or something that they had to cut it down to 2 hours exactly, because this film is roughly exactly 2 hours. So they must have been told they had to cut a lot from it. So they cut an hour's worth of film, and as a result, a lot of characters feel like they were sacrificed or thrown to the wayside as a result, such as Charlie Hunnam's character, the guy who plays in Sons of Anarchy. He plays a doctor slash childhood friend of the main character, played by Mia Wasikowska. I'm just gonna call her Alice. In the Alice movie, the Alice in Wonderland live action movies, she plays Alice. So I'm just gonna call her Alice, because I am not gonna be able to pronounce that last name. I'm just gonna butcher it every single time. Alice's childhood friend is the guy from Sons of Anarchy, right? And her father is played by Jim Beaver. Jim Beaver's excellent. He's excellent in the movie. There's 3 acts, roughly. You get 3 acts, 3-act structure. That's how most films are set up. The first act is Mia at home, and she meets the mysterious stranger. They get romantical, and then they get married and move to his childhood home. The second act is Alice in the childhood home, acclimating to the new surroundings and uncovering a mystery through the backdrop of horror and ghosts haunting this place. And the ghosts aren't necessarily there to be scary or horror movie jump scare crap, but they're meant to be more of an allegorical clues, so to speak. They're here to tell her, to give her clues and help her solve this mystery, right? And then the third act is the confrontation. The confrontation with the antagonist of the narrative and her figuring out how to survive that confrontation. Simple enough, right? Well, I say it's simple enough, but the plot as a whole feels like there's a lot of stuff that was like cut from it. There's some pieces of narrative that feel like they were sacrificed. Like maybe there was a longer plot arc with Charlie Hunnam's character, the guy from Sons of Anarchy. Maybe there's a little bit more that he had to do in the original cut that he doesn't get to do in this version. Because as far as we see of his character, he has maybe an introductory scene where they meet again, and then a second scene where he explains to her ghost photography, this little element that never comes up again. Though I feel like it should have, the whole Chekhov's gun thing. This scene feels like it was only there because they had nothing else of this character left in the film, so they had to give him this. But there's no Chekhov's gun with this ghost photography stuff, right? So I feel like that should have gone somewhere, the whole ghost photography with this guy's character and all that stuff. I feel like that element of the ghost photography should have come into play at some point in the second or third acts. But it didn't. At least I didn't see it. So they had that scene, and then there's a scene at the ball where he goes like, "Hi, I'm still here," but he's in the background, and then he identifies the body of Jim Beaver, and then at the end of that, he investigates something in the background. We don't really see too much of him, maybe about a minute tops, and throughout the second act. And then at the third act, he shows up, he gets wounded, and then he walks away. That's the totality of his character, he has very little. There's no arc, there's no journey. He's definitely a supporting cast, but there's nothing to this guy's character. The true strength of character in this story's writing, in the script, in the drafts, all that, the true strength of these characters come from Tom Hiddleston and Jessica Chastain. They play siblings. Tom Hiddleston plays the charming, mysterious stranger that seduces Alice to get her to move to the Crimson Peak Manor, right? And Alice is a character who is susceptible to the paranormal. She could see ghosts. She could see all that goody stuff. And there is a reason why there's some sort of spooky horror elemental backdrop to this, and I explained this at painful length and detail in the previous take. I'll try to summarize it this time. So, in this film, there are a lot of nods and references to certain waves of the horror genre throughout the history of film. And the one that is the most glaringly apparent is the era of Hammer horror. Mia, the Alice, plays a character by the name of something. Is it Elaine? Ellie? Edith. She plays the character of Edith, and her last name is Cushing. Edith Cushing, right? Cushing is the last name of Peter Cushing, also popular as General Tarkov, or not Tarkov, Tarkin, Grand Moff Tarkin. And Tarkin is the character in Star Wars, if you know about that. That's the most popular thing that people would know him from. But I know him from Hammer Horror. He's excellent in Hammer Horror. He's in so many stories, man. He's in so many. He's like the poster boy of Hammer Horror alongside Christopher Lee, who also plays in Star Wars, which is funny to me. But anyways, so Edith Cushing, the Alice's character, is played that. You know, it's a nod to Hammer Horror. And then the color of crimson. That's one thing that I want to really emphasize with Guillermo del Toro's films. The emphasis of color. In almost every single one of his films, there is a tone. There is a color that demands your attention. In this, it's red. In The Shape of Water, it's blue. But there's a color that pops more than anything else in this film. It just glares out at you. And the way he sets up his sets, the way he puts the tone, he sets up the tone, it is reminiscent to Hammer Horror in this regard, in the Crimson Peaks regard. Because in Hammer Horror, when they had their films in color, a lot of the time with their gothic horror films like The Gorgon, you would have set pieces that are more browns and grays, a lot of neutral colors, right? And then when someone would bleed, when someone would get a wound, the red would pop. Your eye draws to that color. Like when you look at this, you see the blue general tone, the blacks, and the grays on this cover. But what draws your eye? It is the red. You are drawn to the red, just like you are drawn to it in all of the backdrops throughout this film. And well, the red in this isn't blood. It is clay, red clay, crimson red clay, and it is excellent. It is beautiful to see. If there's one thing that I will give this film endless amount of praise on, is that the set designs, the costumes, the color, the directing, the cinematography, all of it is beautiful. It makes this film step right out of the Hammer Horror era. And admittedly, Hammer Horror tends to be very cheaply made, and most of their films tend to be around the 90-minute mark. This one's more than around the 2-hour minute mark, and it kind of feels like it had an extra hour's worth of film, so I don't think there's too many horror films, if any, that ever broke 3 hours, let alone 2. But hey, sometimes I think when you want to have a film that truly wants to be a love letter to certain genres, go all the way with it, man. You gotta go all the way with it. Because sometimes a 4-hour flick, a 3-hour flick, it's okay. You just can't oversaturate us with it. Like, if you're going to have one film say, hey, we're going to make our movie 3 hours, then maybe not release like 15 3-hour long flicks of the same theatrical quarter. Maybe one or two every quarter or so. You gotta plan these things out, you know? So that some films have to sacrifice and they cut a lot of stuff, and I feel like with the writing it wasn't super strong with some characters, mainly Alice's character and the Doctor's character, the guy who plays the guy in Sons of Anarchy, Charlie Hunnam's character. Yeah, those two characters are sacrificed, but Tom Hiddleston's character and Jessica Chastain's character are excellent. There is a lot of inferred storytelling with these characters that are told atmospherically. There's not a lot of exposition that you get to see with these characters, but there's enough to give you a general idea. And then when you see the rest of the film and all of the cinematography at work where they're pointing to certain elements, you're seeing certain clues, you can put things together with these two characters, and it is expertly done. I feel like you could have just cut out Charlie Hunnam's character entirely, and you would lose nothing to this narrative. You could have had a little bit more strength of character. Maybe all of the cutscenes involving Charlie Hunnam's character could have been given more runtime to Mia's character to help develop her. But even though she's in the film for the whole thing, there's just not a lot that she does. She feels like a character that is carried along the film rather than a character that carries the film. It's more that the film carries her, if that makes sense. And if that's fine sometimes, but it just doesn't feel like a satisfying journey, an ending journey to this character. A lot of the stuff that she uncovers throughout the mystery elements of this film feel like they're just given to her. She doesn't do something to earn that information or learn that information. But I digress. But let's talk about the ghosts and the horror part first. Last, or whatever. We're going to wrap up soon. I want to cut this at 15 minutes, but let's see. At the start of the film, there's a certain level of parallel storytelling that helps to justify why there's a lot of horror, spooky, ghost elements in the narrative. There's a lot of criticism for this film in regards to how it was marketed. You could watch a lot of the trailers and you would see that this might have been marketed as more of a horror film, but that is mismarketing. That is erroringly marketed, whatever. This is more of a gothic romance, psychological horror thriller mystery. There's a lot of stuff in there, but it's like a blend of many genres into one, and it works. To me, it works. The ghosts and the horror stuff are a backdrop. At the start of the film, Mia, who plays an aspiring novelist, has handwritten a manuscript, a story, and she hands this story to a character. I forget his name, but he plays Herbert Cadbury in the Richie Rich film. He also plays Alan Parrish's father in Jumanji. He's an excellent actor. I wish he was in more films. So he reads the manuscript, and he critiques it. He says, why are there ghosts in here? Why is there horror stuff in here? And Alice, Mia's character, explains that the ghosts are more of an allegory to help symbolize other things or to help carry the narrative to other directions, but they are not the focal point of the narrative. To which Herbert Cadbury's character just scoffs at it and says, maybe you should make it just plain out romance. To which Alice scoffs at him in return and says, blah, 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 blah. But that right away, that felt to me like Guillermo del Toro's way of explaining why there's horror ghost backdrops to it. It harkens back to the days of Hammer horror with films like Paranoiac and another non-Hammer horror films, but they were released around the same time, such as The Screaming Skull and Dementia 13. Psychological horror sometimes has ghosts and other stuff as an enhancement to a certain character direction, as a character sees spooky stuff and uncovers things to help explain another part of the narrative. And that's what I feel like these ghosts are for. They're not the main focus. They're not here to jump scare you. They're not here to be like a horror film. They're just part of an encompassing whole. And I feel like they're fine. They're not shoehorned in. I don't feel like you could just take them out and you would create a different narrative. You would create a different story. That's not the point of the ghosts being removed or being shoehorned in. Is not the point of the narrative. They're just an encompassing piece of a larger whole, and it's fine to me. Crimson Peak is fine to me. It's not excellent. I have some problems with a lot of the characters, namely the main character, which is a big part of the problem, but I also really liked Tom Hiddleston's character. I'd give it a B. It's pretty imaginative.